Dear Venerable Sir, Venerable Sisters and Brothers, Dhamma friends, we are going to start the talk today. May every one of you settle down for the talk, and we'll give the consent with 3 times. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Yang yadeva paccayang bhikkhave uppajjati vijñānaṁ tena teneva saṅkhaṁ gacchati. Dear Venerable Sisters and Brothers, my friends, whenever we are gathering together like this for a specifically residential retreat, we try our best to facilitate it with all the possible factors in order to make it a success, because very rarely only we get such a precious chance for us to practice full time. So there are a lot of things from different viewpoints to organize, facilitate, but the specific 5 aspects the Buddha recognized, and out of compassion he has mentioned for the success of such a retreat. According to the omniscient knowledge of the Buddha, he declared there are 5 aspects. Collectively or individually, we have to make sure the first and foremost aspect towards the success of the retreat, according to the presentation of the Buddha, is our moral conduct or moral responsibility. That is to say, from the Thero point of view, adhering to our individual precepts. So we have selected 8 precepts as the norm. And besides that, as a retreat center, we must have our own rules and regulations, compendium of rules. Otherwise, very difficult to have a timetable or have a discipline specifically within the group. So therefore, individually, as well as collectively, to make sure by understanding each and every precept, as well as by understanding the rules and regulation pertaining to the retreat, it's one thing. The second aspect the Buddha enumerated is, again and again, you have to listen to the discourses or instructions. That is why we have allocated 1 hour each day for this Dhamma talk. And whatever may be your theoretical knowledge or book knowledge, again and again, listening to the instructions is quite a necessary and required aspect as far as the facilitating is concerned. So it is called Sutta Anugahita, and therefore we collectively listen to the Dhamma sermon. Often we select something promoting and helping all the 3 disciplines, the moral discipline or moral conduct or sila sikha, and concentration discipline or conduct, that is called samadhi sikha, and wisdom or insight, and pertaining to that restrainment, and that is called panya sikha. So we have to rebrush, to remind. One aspect of that is listening. That is what we call Sutta Anugahita. And the other one is the discussion. We have to have discussions among the practitioners. Then our doubts will be rectified, and we can listen to the co-practitioners and their ways and means whenever the question happen. So it will be having some pragmatic answers, and in a discussion we develop kind of a brotherhood as co-practitioners. So that's also one thing, and it is really refreshing our retreat. With all these three, the moral conduct and theoretical understanding, by listening and discussion only, we can help promote our concentration training. That's called samadhi sikha, and wisdom training, panya sikha. So after taking precepts, or after adhering to the moral conduct, and after listening and after discussion, just by waiting, you can't expect to achieve your results. You have to practice. That practice is in two ways. One thing is practice pertaining to the concentration or one-pointedness, and the other one is the wisdom, that is being called insight meditation, that is to see things as they are. So these are the 5 aspects, or anuggahita in Pali, the Buddha mentioned. So then only our immature mind or untrained mind will become trained and matured, and the liberation which we expect could be experienced within this very life. So therefore each and every one of us will accept it without a doubt. One thing is because that is given by Buddha. The second one is each and everyone is here is basically to have one's own meditation experience and advancement and the furtherance of the experience. So therefore, before coming to the retreat, among the organizers, there was a discussion as to what must be the topic upon which we are going to have the discourses. And in the discussion, it's been presented as Maha Thanhasankaya Sutta as the topic for the whole series, main topic. And Maha Thanhasankaya Sutta, if you are interested in reference and reading in the books, you may find it in the Sutta Pitaka. That means among the discourses in the Majjhima Nikaya, the middle-length sayings, the particular sutta is numbered as number 38. And as far as that particular sutta is concerned, is the Thanhasankaya literal meaning, or literal translation is how to destruct craving or destruction of craving. It's being Maha Thanhasankaya Sutta. Accordingly, it is being translated as the great discourse on destruction of craving. So that means understanding our basic cause for our samsaric suffering is craving. The Maha Thanhasankaya Sutta, or by this particular sutta, the Buddha is presenting the way that happen not merely due to the initiative of the Buddha. There's a case behind, or event behind, and after that only the Buddha present this particular thesis or particular theory. So we would take little time to understand the background history or case history upon which the Buddha delivers this discourse. While the Blessed One was living in Savatthi, that's the main center whereby the Buddha started this mission. And while he was there was a fellow monk, and he had a kind of a wrong view, a pernicious view, and he openly used to say among his friends, so that it was a fairly common thing among the other fellow meditators and monks. He used to say, Yata tadevitang vijnanam sandhavati sansarati ananyam. He used to say, consciousness that runs or continues and wanders through around the rebirth cycle, not another, that means single consciousness is running through. So that is his view. And the other fellow meditators, who are the co-practitioners, they came to know this is a wrong view, but this particular bhikkhu, monk, known as Sati, continue to express the same. There's a one single consciousness. It is wandering and it is going round and round. It's a single one and it is continuous. And for him it is quite fitting, and therefore he recognized himself with this theory or with this concept, as well as invariably with this kind of consciousness. He considered, I am the consciousness, and that consciousness is going to sleep, and tomorrow morning that very consciousness is going to wake up. The consciousness is the same. I mean, it is, when we put into that kind of general terms, we are also not escaped. We are also having almost the same. We think before the meal and after the meal, I am the same. Here the I means the consciousness. The very person going to sleep will wake up and recognize as the same. And the person going to die and going to get a rebirth, the continuation is, the connection is nothing but the consciousness. So it is very common thing among the living beings, specifically human beings, but when you are practicing, specifically with the moral restrainment, concentration restrainment, and the wisdom, if you are the same, there cannot be any evolution. So what is the use of moral restrainment? And then what is the use of the concentration restrainment? And what is the use of this wisdom restrainment? So therefore, if it is the continuation of the same consciousness, and you are destined, your thing is that cannot be changed, so therefore you can't give any value for this moral shame and the moral fear. Or you can't give any value for restrainment of your faculties. You can't give any value for precepts. Because whatever you do, the consciousness is the same. And whatever the concentration you are going to have, jhanic experience or not, materialistic sphere or immaterialist sphere, consciousness is the same. And whatever the knowledge you are going to have, experience, under your very nose, or things as they are, or you accept in and out everything as the truth, verifiable or unverifiable, deductive or not, inferential or truth, or what you heard, everything makes no sense because the consciousness is the same. So that is what the kind of wrong view the particular Sati Bhikkhu hold, and that is what the cause for this repercussion. Ultimately monks get together and ask that particular Sati Bhikkhu, "Oh Venerable, do you have that kind of wrong view or pernicious view, consciousness that runs and wanders through the rounds of rebirth is the same, not another?" He says, yes, verily that is what I am having. So I am standing for that. So that means he is recognizing himself with this view as well as he is recognizing himself with this consciousness. And ultimately, all the bhikkhus, the fellow meditators, don't hold into that view. It is wrong. This is not what the Buddha prescribed. Therefore, don't try to be adamant with this, hold into this, cling into this. But he says, no, I am talking with my own experience. So therefore, no reason for me to think separately, differently. So after this failure of this discussion, the bhikkhus themselves went to the Buddha and made a complaint, telling Bhante, there's a monk, a fisherman's son, known as Hati. He's having this kind of a view. Not only that, he's professing it. He's openly telling others. So therefore we come into being and we listen it. And we are not agreeing with him. Therefore we ask him to reconsider, and we gave reasoning. But he is not happy. So therefore we thought of complaining it to you, and you may do what is suitable, needful. And then the bhikkhu, then the Buddha sent a message to the Sati, the bhikkhu, telling that the Buddha is calling for you, the congregation. And once he come to the congregation, the Buddha stated or expressed the complaint, telling that these monks are telling that you are having that kind of a wrong view, Upanishad's view. The same vijnana or the same consciousness is round and wandering through these rebirths, and there is no other. It's exactly the thing. Then he says, yes, Bhante. I am, what they are telling is true. I am with that view. So the very same vijnana is going through and wandering, and there's no second, there's no other one. The very same consciousness. Then the Buddha is asking, where did you hear this? To whom that I have preached that kind of a pernicious view? Haven't I mentioned always, Yanyadeva bhikkhave paccam paticca vijnana, tena teneva sankam gacchati. What I mention you is, consciousness is reckoned by that particular condition dependent upon which it arises. So it is dependent originated, not a continuous permanent thing. Having said so clearly like this, how can you hold into this kind of a wrong view or pernicious view? And not only that, you are professing to the others also. Then ask the other bhikkhus also, haven't I mentioned you that the consciousness is reckoned by the particular condition dependent upon which it arises? It is not the same thing continuing. When all the monks are agreeing with the Buddha, the Sati, the monk who had this pernicious view, he withdrew and he was dismayed, and he was thoughtless. He can't think about. And everyone understood in the congregation. Then the Buddha start the discourse. This is the root cause, or this is the case history upon which it happened. The Buddha to give a discourse or deliver discourse through which he is going to teach us how to destruct or how to destroy the craving. So during the time of the Buddha, or contemporary time or prehistoric time, likewise there were 5 causes or 5 reasons, 5 ways that people started to understand or recognize themselves and attributed their views to 5 aspects. That some people thought that myself or my ego centered around the materiality, appearance or material gains. So therefore that is called Bhautikavada or materialism. So I recognize myself with my wealth, I recognize myself with my body, I recognize myself with my appearance. So they try to maximize it, and their recognition is with the materiality. So therefore they try their best, or their livelihood of is to maximize the material gain or wealth or the appearance, and they consider this body is everything, and they try their best to make it more prolific and gain all the pleasure as far as the body is concerned. And the disadvantage of such a view is they are not worried about the morality, they are not concerned about the moral responsibilities, so they try to maximize their materialistic gain. And even today we can see what is called materiality or materialism, or that is ultimately going into this luxurious consumerization society. And whenever you go to that, you get a disease called affluenza, not influenza, kind of affluenza that is completely very clear. And I am coming from Sri Lanka, but Australia is more with that disease when compared to Sri Lanka. So, and we are chasing behind. No one can say we have completely disproved it, and we are up to disproving it. So part and partial, maybe at a time, maybe in a day, or at a time, maybe in a year or week, you are believing it and you are facilitating it. That is the materialism. And with respect to that, there are some kind of people, they are much with feelings and affection. They go by pleasure principle. And during the Western philosophy also, before the Western philosophy came into being, and it also was basically with the materialism, and then the Sigmund Freud, he explained the human behavior through the sexuality, or Eastern mind explained the human behavior with sensuality, that is with respect to feelings. Whatever you do is to maximize your pleasure, and for that whatever you do is justified because you are the person entertaining that pleasure. Don't worry about the next life, or don't worry about the other person's consent. Don't worry about the moral shame and the moral fear, and that is also increasing. And that was much gathered the momentum once the technology come into being. Once the infrastructure, communication, technology come into being, that is totally give a full license for the pleasure principle. So still it is catching as far as the majority is concerned. But the key people concerned about the technology, key people concerned about the science, they know it is really destructive. But unlucky enough, the people subjected to that, or people at large, still they believe science, because it's an accelerated way for someone to gain more pleasure, or pleasure principle. The third aspect, common to the prehistoric time as well as present day, is the sanya, or communication with signs, or attributing signs in order to make more communicated, or reification of the same sign in order to, or coding and decoding of this thing. And ultimately this is also appear to be kind of a thing specific to the human being. And when compared with the other animals, they also have kind of signs and reading of the signs, or coding and decoding. But a human, they have specialized it. That's called Thanasankaya and perception. And they perceive something. In order to perceive, they attribute some signs, and according to the sign, they perceive. And it is called present-day information technology. And that's also heavily developed now. And through that also, you can have specific kind of pleasures, specific kind of things. So that is also one aspect in human life through the perception. Yes. Simply, or we can say, for the time being, information technology. The fourth aspect is volitional activity, that is initiative, creativity, productivity. Each and everyone recognized with his own product, my creation, or my innovation, my creativity. So we people, when we are living in the society, our status fairly dependent upon, or in the sense, who am I, depend upon my products. But I created my productivity and my initiative thing. So that is a kind of a volitional activity of my will, and that is also part and partial. And nowadays, present day, it is still prevailing, just like from the time of the Buddha or prehistoric time. That is called sanskara skandha, or our own creativity, our own willful action. And the last and the most subtle thing is my consciousness. I recognize with my consciousness, I sleep with same consciousness, and I get up with the same consciousness. Before the eat and after eating. Before this life and after this life, consciousness is the same. So this particular bhikkhu, known as Sati, is in a sense a good fellow, because he is not a materialistic. He is not with the pleasure principle. He is not misguided with the information technology. He is not a fellow recognizing this and that, his own creativity. And he is recognizing the most subtlest thing. That is, consciousness is the key. And he recognizes myself as consciousness, or invariable intrinsic factor of myself. Or who am I? I am my consciousness. So therefore, we can't outright reject the Sati's view, because we are already caught up. Either one of. Maybe we are caught up in materialism, or feelings, or perception, or our own creation and recognizing with that, or understanding the consciousness as myself. So, unless otherwise we have a particular tool, very difficult for us to say yes or no. Because our day-to-day activity, whether you on principles or in theory we accept or not, in our day-to-day activities, specifically our language is totally accepting and approving this consciousness. So therefore, other monks, even they know, even they knew the Sati is wrong, they can't prove it. Only the Buddha, the person who having the very sharp tools, he is the only person can prove or disprove to the Sati. In that way, we people after 2,600 years later, still we can put that tool into practice and see how much our day-to-day activities with Sati, or how much it is with Sati. Sati is the name of that particular monk. Sati means the mindfulness. As far as we are not with Sati, or mindfulness, we are with Sati. So we can say we are hardly followers of the Buddha, but very good followers of Sati. So if you are going to laugh at Sati, you are laughing at your mirror image. So therefore, we can't reject sati. Instead, we have to try to understand and see how to prove or disprove. Sati, unlucky enough, he never tried to prove it. Whenever the Buddha is questioning, he gave it up and he surrendered, dismayed. But taking this opportunity, the Buddha is not answering sati. He is answering the other monks, those who have raised the question. And then they recorded it. And now we get the discourse, Maha Thanhasankaya Sutta, for 2,600 years. If it is such a very open issue to the other monks, they wouldn't have remembered this as something valuable. This became a case because other monks also, even though they put sati into the court and let the Buddha to decide, the way the Buddha is giving the answer is a teaching not only for the sati, even for the sati bhikkhu, even for us. So therefore we have to go into the sutta or go into the discourse very carefully and understand in a simple way when and where, this is my way of presenting, when and where we are not mindful, we are either recognized with materiality, materialism, or recognized with feelings, or perception, or volitional activities, or willful activities, or consciousness. The Sati's question is easier because he misunderstood only one. In our case, it is more complicated. When we are analyzing, we have misunderstanding pertaining to 5. So therefore, when and where we are recognizing, we as practitioners, recognizing our line of thinking, deductive thinking, inferential knowledge, pertaining to the materiality or materialism or consumerization or luxurious way, so simply we have to say we are not mindful. When and where we are mindful, we are not only answering this destruction of craving through the disproving of consciousness, we are disproving it, as we are destructing craving by disproving the materialism also. But it is not directly dealt in this particular sutta. But anyway, by this comparison only, we can make use of our deductive knowledge, inferential knowledge, and understand how powerful the mindfulness is. Not that mindfulness is going to destroy this pernicious view pertaining to the consciousness. It is taking care about all the 5 aspects. So therefore, whenever the Buddha is delivering a discourse, he always gives this comparative or relative understanding, so that before you go into your direct touch or under your very nose experience, you can deduce it. You can get the inferential knowledge or rational knowledge. Sometimes that itself is very lucrative. Sometimes it is so lucrative, it is, you feel like put into practice and try yourself. So therefore the lucrative presentation is a teaching technique in Buddhism. So you have to understand not only pertaining to the consciousness, others also, because whenever we see the personality traits or personality types among the society, those who recognize the disadvantageous side of the materialism, the disadvantageous side of this consumerization, or this luxurious way of living, they naturally or comparatively become religious or spiritual. So we people usually recognize as not much chasing behind blindly about the materialism or the consumerization or luxury or affluenza So therefore fairly we can recognize as religious people or spiritual people. So they have feeling, perception and the volitional activities to recognize as 3 personality traits. When you go take the society at large, 1/3 of the society is more toward the feelings. They are to increase the pleasure principle. Usually we can say with the aesthetic aspects, music, science, creativity, they are really imbibed in that way of life. And they think others have no any feeling for this kind of a aesthetic thing. So they make that kind of a aesthetic world, and they are most of their time, they embrace or involved with this feelingful area. Some other people are more to the communication, cognition, recognition, coding and decoding, and through that they can understand how efficiently we can use the language, how efficiently we can use the arithmetic, how efficiently we can use science, and they specialize on that. And they don't have much of feeling to the aesthetic side. They are on the cognition and recognition, perception. And some other party, they are creative. They are architects. They are creating new things, productive things, and they entertain their own one and they recognize with it. And all these 3, the feeling type, perception type and the volitional type, have this underlying current of consciousness. Consciousness is the father, or consciousness is the mother, that produce feeling, perception and the volitional activities. They are more active. And whenever your personality is more with the feelings, you will be taken that aesthetic path. Whenever you are more proficient, efficient, and in the perception, that you will be taken for that coding, decoding kind of a way of life. Or whenever you are thinking about your creative nature, productive and progressing nature, you appreciate much of your creativity and productivity, and you consider this is the way to measure the value of the life and appreciate the life. Other people don't understand, they don't appreciate it. So this is the way we have. So that does not indicate they are discretely different personalities. Even one person may carry sometimes 2, or some people in the morning one type, midday, evening one type. Or some people at the early stage of their life, one personality, and it is changing. So therefore we can understand whether to go for materialism or to go for the feeling, perception or volitional. The consciousness is hidden. Consciousness is not, it is not the tip of the iceberg. It is undercurrent or upward push of them. So therefore sati is not so bad. Sati's concern is the very subtlest thing. But other people may be more obviously make a mistake. Their mistakes may be more obvious, and but the end result is the same. So therefore we have to make use this comparison, and then only each and every personality trait or personality types can make use this discourse and try to get their own answer, get their own way out, irrespective of their personality trait. So therefore we all have to keep our mind open when the discourse is advancing, and see how much each and every type is attributing the behind the screen consciousness. And it is not easy unless otherwise you are morally responsible, unless otherwise you have theoretical understanding, Unless otherwise you have a question and answer and the discussion, unless otherwise you have a concentration, unless otherwise you have the wisdom or inside meditation. So therefore, answer is not single-fold. Answer is a long process. Overnight you can't have it. Or by discourse you can't have it. Only what we can do is, we can just refine little bit of the way we have already taken, maybe little bit of corrections, maybe take into the middle path or least frictional path. So therefore, while listening, we have to put into practice. So that is how the sati become helpful for us. For us to become sati bhikkhu, we have to understand sati bhikkhu. Whenever we are not mindful, we have to understand we are carried away or taken for a ride by one of these five perverted ways. So in order to disprove the sati's misunderstanding or pernicious view, the Buddha is taking very simple logic or deductive argument. He says, you sati, going to say, consciousness is a continuous process, and that very consciousness is the one taking you from this life to the other life. But my presentation is, consciousness is arising then and there, dependent upon the relevant cause. Whenever the causes are different, consciousness arising very quickly, but it is fragile. It is momentous. So whenever it is momentous, you can say the continuity is there, but not that what you are going to say. For example, when a physics master is going to teach you the direct current and the alternative current, the direct current is something flowing from the negative to the positive, the continuity of the current. But the reciprocal current is oscillation, it's a vibration. With that vibration also you can transmit power. So how to understand both of them are current, AC current and the DC current? The easy way, that's what in the classrooms we have been taught, start with the AC DC current and then go to the DC current. So therefore Sati Bhikkhu is the starting point. He is talking about the AC DC current. It's a continuous flow. And then when it is going, the continuous flow cannot serve this society at large unless otherwise you introduce this alternative current, because alternative current has a lot of other advantages. So therefore, often we use this alternative current, but in order to go into this subject, the alternation or oscillation, first you have to understand the simple current, that is the DC current. So likewise, we have to understand that when we refer back to our past, we can remember some people can remember when I am a child at the age of 10, 20, 30, 40, when it's going, the continuation. So that continuation is Sati. That is what Sati is telling, that very consciousness is undergoing this wandering and all the kind of thing, but the consciousness is the same. So all of us is the same. Because our time, we measure in chunks. Imagine we can have a thin slicing of time. If you can thin slice the time, then only you can see the reciprocal or oscillation in this time game. So that is what I mean by mindfulness. Be diligent, be vigilant, and be aware when and where experience happening, phenomena takes place, when and where something experiencing, don't let the thinking to take you for a ride. That means a chunk of time. You have to understand thin slicing of time. When you are thin slicing of time, your very pernicious view is destroying you. You can't do because you are already in this wrong view. Time is something like a continuous thing. And therefore, thin slicing of time means thin slicing of your ego. Thin slicing, destruction of your ego. So therefore, ego never allow for you to do this experiment. So therefore, you have to declare war. Suppose that you are a mentally imbalanced person. Suppose you are a physically imbalanced person. You can go mad. You can commit suicide, no problem, because you are declaring war with that continuity. So that is why the Buddha says, if you wish to understand the pernicious ego sati, and if you are ready to make use this discourse, and not only the understanding of the consciousness is momentary, but making use that very way to destroy your craving, you have to understand the gravity of this task. And there you have to really understand, you can't prescribe this kind of experiment in society at large. You can prescribe to yourself, you have that human right. But you have no any human rights to profess this to someone, unless other person come and request. Other person come and offer to you. So whenever you are going to profess, you become ism, Buddhism. That is the point where the sectarianism come into being. When and where you try to do this experiment of thin slicing of time, or this continuity of the mindfulness, or steadfast mindfulness, very difficult to give it in society at large, or plural sense. You have to be here, now, I am. This is the only dimension you can continue. So that is a heavy challenge for a social being. A person in the society recognize this and that, or family unit, or religious unit, or creed, or nation, or kind of thing. Considering anything on here now I am, appear like very selfish. So therefore, the Theravada tradition is always under this criticism. When and where you go to thin slicing of time, when and where you go to mindfulness, or that I am talking little bit on the steadfast mindfulness, you will see, appear like you are going against the social norms. So this is why the Buddha says it is going against the grain. So you should have personality, physical and mental. Otherwise, you can't cut through this current, and you are declaring a losing war. In order to have a winning war at the outset, right from the beginning, to understand the thin slicing of time, or steadfast mindfulness, or diligence, or vigilance, it not only disproving the continuity of the mindfulness, continuity of the consciousness, it is not only disproving your creativity and your volitional activities is the falsified thing. Not only disproving that your recognition and cognition with your data and your all the kind of thing is kind of a dream. Not only disproving that your pleasure principle is nothing but a dream at the deathbed. Not only telling that materialism that you gain and acclaim and everything. Therefore, it is cutting off the craving for all the 5 aspects. But someone has to ask, am I ready? Is this my objective? Is this my aim of this retreat? Have I recognized this before put forth my effort for the mindfulness? So this is a kind of a basic question. And when you present this kind of a question, people get frightened, not get encouraged, not feel like experimenting. So therefore, if someone is going to say, basic understanding regarding the vipassana or insight meditation, or basic understanding regarding the mindfulness or thin slicing of time or diligence and vigilance, is it a necessary thing for the yogi to start yogic life or not? Open question. Should they have a basic understanding of what gravity, what task that I am going to have? Can someone start the spiritual life without that? It's a kind of a open issue. For that, if you take the American Buddhism, they take the mindfulness and the vipassana for the secular side. They never express that for the emancipation. It is too much for them. Because they are completely materialistic world. They are completely in pleasure principle. They completely recognize we are in the first world. And they are the creative people, and they are the owner of all the kind of thing, and it is that my consciousness is super class. So if you are going to say the mindfulness and the vipassana is to emancipate or liberation, it's an utter threat for them. So if you wish to introduce, you can't introduce vipassana, you can't introduce nibbana, but slightly you can introduce mindfulness, and you can see very clearly they are defining it is secular. So, traditional Buddhists, some people like Sri Lankan, they consider this a distortion of Buddhism, not the introduction of Buddhism. This is not the production. This is not the introduction and spreading of the Buddhism. This is a distortion of the Buddhism. This is a misrepresenting of the Buddha, just like Sati. It's just like Sati. And whenever you become acclaimed person, or whenever you have the disease called affluenza, you are also Sati. Simply. So therefore, this question, whether someone should have the basic understanding of tenet before the mindfulness, or can anyone start mindfulness, on the way you are going to understand the real, essential meaning of mindfulness, it's a kind of a thing reserved for the Buddha to come next. We are not in that position. Only what we can, or I would say, only what I can do is, I can just refine the idea that I am having, why I became a monk, why I am practicing mindfulness, why should I seek for Nibbana, that we can refine little by this effort, but we can't measure the whole popularity of society at large from my yardstick. Then the ism come into being. Then sectarianism come into being. So therefore it appear like selfish. But the brightness of the Buddha is, even though it is related to your own personality, your own life and selfish, his communication, he is giving in such a way, each and every person in the society can individually put into their thinking pattern and see whether it is something gainful, it's a worthwhile giving a try or not. So therefore still we can talk in society at large. But you have to understand the communication takes place only in the individual basis, or otherwise from the meditation jargon or in our vipassana jargon, it is happening in the here, now, I am basis. Even though we can share the same philosophy, same moment, it is happening, whenever it is practicing, it is happening in the here, now, I am basis. Only under such circumstances only, you can thin slice the time, you can thin slice the consciousness. Otherwise, consciousness will be like a thick seam or thread. It continues from one moment to the others, and one event to the other, one day to the next, one life to the other, it is happening. So, if you can remember, or if you have ever experienced a cinema in the old pattern, where the projector is projecting the flash, and when it goes and stuck into the screen, you can see animation, you can see tragedies and comedies, and when the time passes, you can understand what the producer is going to produce. You can communicate with this film or the cinema. So when you are gazing at the screen, you see the continuity of the light in the screen. But when I was in the classroom, my physics master mentioned how the projector is working. At the beginning, at the source, there's two electrodes, there's a electric spark is happening, so it is producing a light. And then it is taken out for the very square orifice or hole, and then going through a cam. When the cam is rotating, at a time it is cutting the light, at a time it is allowing the light. And before the cam, you have the celluloid, the film, and then the lights which is flickering now going through the film in a particular rounds per minute, and that light is projected to the screen and it is flashing. But even though it is flashing, our eye cannot recognize this as a dark and light reciprocal activity. We see the continuity of the lightness. We see the light. But when you are looking at the film, 50% of the time you are in the darkness. But our eyes are not recognizing. We see continuity. This is what happens when you are not thin slicing of time. When you are not mindful. Everything appears like a continuity. Knowing that, when you are looking at the film, and after the teaching, our teacher asked us to look at the screen and remember the projector, where the cam is allowing the light and sometimes preventing 50-50. And when you look at them, only you can see one after the other, the flash has come into the screen, and our eye make it continuous. Without that, no animation. Without that, no animation. Animation happen within that dark space. So you are the filmmaker. You are the person make these two slides connected to each other in the darkness, and then animation happen. And the most important thing is, most striking thing is, when you try to see this dark and light, when the film is running, you can't entertain the film. No. You can see the flickering nature, you can see light happens, darkness happens, and the actors and everything going on. If you wish to see the film in terms of darkness and the lightness, the film is no more a film. It is distracted. So then that day onward, I never visited any cinema. Useless. You can't avoid that once you introduce this. You go and see the film and see how the darkness and lightness is changing, why it is happening. If you are ignorant enough, if you are foolish enough, the animation happens. Then you can see the tragedies, comedies, every kind of thing. But if you have to see how the projector is working, once in a way, instead of the screen, you may look at the projector and see you're completely destroying the theme, the attraction to the film. So that is what happened in the meditation. You have been asked to see, for example, the passive activity, what you call the breathing, and whenever you see, breathing is continuous. Otherwise you will die. Then ask, okay, no problem, that you are a living being, you are depending on the air, no problem. You look at it and try to see when and where you are with breath. Can you be with the world outside? No. Whenever your mind is engaged in the outside world, you cannot be aware of the breath. Whenever you are with the breath, you cannot be aware of the outside world. It is exclusively different two things. So you to understand that, not by the first breath you are mindful, you can understand. You have to listen, you have to argue, you have to question and answer, and practice continuously. Ultimately you will understand whenever you are 100% with the breath, outside world is gone. Okay. Then it is, when you are with the in-breath, can you be the out-breath? Whenever you are with the out-breath, can you think about the in-breath? No. Exclusively different, that is delimited and discrete. So now it says, okay, once you be aware of the breath, secure the breath, now you have to understand theoretically you have given away the rest of the world. And when you go to the breath, when and where you are one thing at a time and that done well, that is to say, when the in-breath happens, wholeheartedly when you are in the in-breath, can you think about the out-breath or the world? No. Okay. Now when you are in-breath, if you know you are with the in-breath, you can see it is exclusively starting from nothingness and it is disappearing complete to the nothingness. And before going to the out-breath, there's a cessation of the in-breath, 100%. Have you ever seen it for your whole life? No. Otherwise you can't live. You think breath is continuous. But the breath is comparative to the in-breath to the out-breath. Out-breath starts once the in-breath is completely ceases to exist. Once the in-breath starts, when the out-breath ceases, that you have the great fear to see this gap. That is called fear of unknown. And the Buddha says that the disappearance of in-breath and the disappearance of out-breath is the cessation of suffering or liberation. That you have the fear of freedom. You have the fear of liberation. So you see only the active breath. You have failed to see the cessation of in-breath, cessation of out-breath. So therefore at the beginning you have to love in-breath and out-breath. But that love to in-breath and out-breath is to not to prove that bloody thing, but to disprove it. And that is why it says once you become familiar with the in-breath and out-breath, maybe it is rising and falling, maybe it is left leg and the right leg, clearly see, specifically with the breath and the rising and falling, when something ceases to exist, only other thing can happen, therefore completely exclusively different. So how crafty your mind is not to see the cessation of in-breath or cessation of the out-breath. That is how you entertain this life. Whenever you are nearing, whenever you are to see the cessation part, you feel allergic, you feel vomitish, you feel something wrong. So that is why at the beginning you see the breath by giving away and forgetting about the world. And when you are mastering, when you are going deeper and deeper, and you are thin slicing of time, you see the cessation of in-breath, cessation of out-breath. More and more you practice, you see, so far in our meditation or in our day-to-day life, we never see the gap. Just like the momentary arising and passing away of the consciousness, Sati says, no arising and passing away, it is continuous. It is happening like a DC current. But the Buddha says it's AC current, arising and passing away, and maybe one cause or different causes. Different causes make a picture more dramatic view. So later we have to go into that. But the first and foremost thing is, take some experience, take some phenomena which is verifiable under your very nose, and see with the gross timing and thin slice the time. When it is happening, you can understand how crafty our mind is not to see the cessation part of the phenomena, any phenomena. For example, we are very happy about the birth, but we have the fear about the death. It is a taboo. We don't accept it. We are very happy with these buildings and every kind of thing, and we think it's auspicious and good. But we know one day it will completely destroy. And when it happens, we think it is the bad weather, or someone has done not maintained, and we attribute to so much of things we are not happy to understand. One day this will get destroyed. It's a common fact. So unless otherwise you keep a equal attitude to the birth and the death, or the phenomena when it is happening, it is arising and passing away, it's only a radical person, only an unconventional person, together with thin slicing of time, also together with the teaching of the Buddha, one day it will click. When it is happening, it's always electric, always unexpected. And that very understanding, you can't forget. You can't erase it from your memory. So our main aim in our retreat like this, or in a meditative life, to understand the gap, something like the floor we are sitting on. It's an agglomeration of pieces of wood. And whenever they are gone, separated, no flow. Something like the continuity of the consciousness, or continuity of anything, just challenge it and develop the mindfulness. Whenever it has become sharp and whenever it is momentum, just put into that, and then you can see how they are exclusively different from each other, but happily we are living on that, thinking it is a flat, thinking it is a continuity. And therefore, if you wish to become sati, you cannot be sati. Whenever you are not mindful and sati, you are naturally sati. So therefore, don't blame sati. He was a very good guy, created the opportunity so that Buddha can explain, not to the sati, not to the congregation there at that time there, even for us. So therefore, any amount of knowledge we have theoretically, any amount of knowledge we have on the practical side, day by day we have to refine in terms of thin slicing of time, in terms of how to look at, how to advert our mind to the phenomena. And in that game, or in that endeavorance, you have to understand your past experience, or I would say past mistakes, are the most important thing. If you do not have that kind of thing, hardly you can understand what the Buddha is talking about, what the satis meant. So therefore we must be happy, because we have fairly invested some time for the book knowledge, invested already sometimes for the practical side. But you have to understand, we have to facilitate it more with the moral restrainment, more with listening, more with discussions, and more with more and more sitting for the concentration, and more with the radical reflection. With that, we may refine with days to come. So with that remark, I would like to sum up today's talk, and I would like to thank you all for listening to the talk. Thank you very much.